If you've ever heard of a Renaissance man, this is where the phrase comes from, the high Renaissance artists. If you haven't heard of it before, it refers to a man who works in many fields, or woman. Leonardo da Vinci, for instance, wasn't just a painter of the time period, he was also an inventor and engineer. And in fact, one of the things that he engineered was a high complex canal system for the Duke of Milan. And here's Leonardo da Vinci himself. He is probably most known for the Mona Lisa, the Last Supper, a sketch or two. But we're really going to focus on his anatomical drawings. Now, his anatomical drawings are often referred to as anatomical manuscript A and anatomical manuscript B, referring to different points in his time that he was studying the human body. Now, his sketches from A come from his time working with an anatomy professor at the University of Pavia, in which time he examined over 30 corpses and over 240 drawings were constructed, or at least he made. Some of his discoveries from these drawings are the very first accurate depiction of the human spinal column and the first known depiction of a cirrhosis of the liver. Now, this study of the heart in depth is innovative of his time. In fact, it suggests the beginning and the understanding of the heart twist and functions. Then we're going to look at his Vitruvian Man done in 1490. Now, the Vitruvian Man comes from a 1st century Roman architect and engineer, Vitruvius, hence the name Vitruvian Man. He left behind writings to discuss the proportions of the human body in relation to geometry and mathematical structures. The blueprints, if you'd have it, of Vitruvius wrote, Da Vinci illustrated. Everything was measured to one another part of the body. The height is about 8 heads tall, the foot is 4 of the palm, and so on. And then we have Michelangelo, who supposedly at a young age was digging up illegal corpses to study the human body, similar to Da Vinci, although Da Vinci was more legal. Now, Michelangelo is probably most known for the Sistine Chapel, which actually Pope Julius II forced him to paint. He was not willing to do so. And we're going to actually look at his Pieta, which is depicting the Mother Mary holding her child Jesus after the crucifixion or after he's passed away. Now, first, a little fun side story. This is the only work he ever signed, and the reason why is believed that he overheard people talking and praising it, but they attributed it to another artist from Milan. Angry about it, Michelangelo went back and actually chiseled his name across Mary's chest, which is why if you look at the folds, they're not quite finished or accurate. Now, he created this at the age of 24. Although praised, he was also ridiculed by many for portraying such a youthful appearance of Mary. Now, Michelangelo purposely depicted her in such a way because she is a virgin, and to pursue her purity, he chose to sculpt her very young. Now, because of choosing to sculpt her very young, and also her being a female, and him being a 33-year-old male, Jesus, that is, she is not actually anatomically correct, and Michelangelo hides the disproportion by accentuating her drapery and the fabric around her on her robes. And in order to support an adult male body, Mary's lower proportions had to be exaggerated in such a manner. On a more anatomical correct level, we see Michelangelo's David, similar yet different for obvious reasons to the Chorus Boys, from ancient Greece. Now, Michelangelo's anatomical David is a pensive-esque pose, and it's right before his triumph over the giant Goliath. He has the slingshot in his hand, the rock in the other. He's about to face him down. Now, this is very different, or you could say, from what we saw in Donatello's David. But like Donatello's David, they both demonstrate the later ancient Greek pose called contrapposto. Unlike those, Michelangelo's David encompasses fear and aggression, and from the furrowed brow, flared nose, to the tensed muscles, we can see that it anatomically demonstrates the psychological state Michelangelo wished to portray, except for the back. Now, the David's back should have been rounded, but this is mostly due to the fact that Michelangelo was not supposed to be the original artist, and when he took over the project and reworked the marble, he supposedly ran out of material. Next, we look at Raphael, most known for the School of Athens mural. We are going to look at his Madonna and Child in comparison to Giotto's. Now, I want to spend not too much time on this, but I really wanted to show a shift in the portraying of realistic bodies from models versus the stylized and symbolic representation that the Byzantine and medieval art showed. Now, Raphael's is more fleshed out, only a hint of halos remain, and the depth within the painting is mastered. And if we look at the baby Jesus in particular, Raphael's is obviously a true baby, whereas Giotto's, we see that sort of homunculus from the time period that he was working in. Moving on to the last artist we're going to look at, his name is Titian. Now, most of his works were actually confused for his teacher Giorgione, but later he becomes the official painter of Venice in 1516. Yes, we have moved on from Florence into Venice. Looking specifically at his Venus of Urbino, in this painting by Titian for the Duke of Urbino, we see the Venus, the goddess of love, staring directly at the viewer as if to aggressively declare her beauty. To further push the emphasis of the viewer's attention to her body, she is painted in light and warm colors surrounded by a very dark background in contrast. Now, even though the woman is the focal point in her nude state, objects from around her tell the viewer of what's actually going on in the painting, that it is a marriage painting. And we see this in the dog sleeping at her feet for the marital fidelity, and the chest in the background suggesting a dowry. After observing all of the anatomical correctness from the High Renaissance, we're going to be shifting into the next lecture, which is going to actually focus on mannerism, which is the exaggeration and distortion of the human body.